You're welcome back to AFM Stories YouTube channel. On today's episode, I have created 4 amazing Chevening leadership essay tips from 4 scholars who have won the scholarship. You're going to be learning a whole lot from them, and I can't wait to see how you apply this to your essays.
For the leadership essay, what Chevening really wants to know is, okay, Chevening is about raising leaders, and what they want to know is, how have you been able to prove yourself to be a leader in your journey over the years? How are you currently being a leader? Then for networking, they want to know how you are able to leverage on the relationship you build with people to get to achieve your goals. For career essay, that's to let them have an idea of what you plan to do, what you intend doing when you get back from your study in the UK. Then the last essay, sorry.
Networking.
I already mentioned networking.
Studying in the UK.
Yeah, studying in the UK, they want to know about your 3 university choices and the courses you've applied to, and also why you've applied to those courses.
Interesting, or what would be like the president of a huge organization? What exactly were they looking for in the training?
Well, personally, I wasn't the head of any company when I applied for Chevening. Basically, what they want to know is how you're able to, no matter how little, how you're able to lead people, how you're able to effect changes. One thing that was common in all of my essays was I used the STAR approach in all of the essays. STAR approach, that's situation, task, action, and the result. So using the STAR approach would help you to arrange your essays in order and help you to actually keep the goal in mind instead of being scattered. Yeah, so that's why it's advised to always use the STAR approach when writing your leadership, when writing all of your essays.
Did you do a STAR approach for a single leadership experience, or
Okay.
multiple experiences? Then you did STAR approach for each of them?
Okay, I would use an example of my leadership essay. So for the STAR approach, I mentioned 3 different instances where I proved myself to be a leader. So for the STAR approach, it's not like you use it for the entire essay. When you're mentioning, for instance, example 1, you use the STAR approach to explain it. Example 2, you use the STAR approach. So that's how it is. Personally, for my leadership essay, let me use the STAR approach for how I wrote my leadership essay. In the situation, I talked about my service here in Taraba State. So the situation I had then was, I was supposed to teach students in the northern part of Nigeria. They didn't understand English language. So the situation was teaching English language to a group of students who did not understand English language. So now that's the situation. Now the task, that's T. The task that I had now was how to teach the students in a way they are going to understand. So now, action. In order to achieve that task, what I did was I organized a literary and debating society to teach them how to communicate. So that was the action I took. That was one of the actions I took. Then the result, that's the R under the STAR approach. The result was at the end of the literary and debating society, after taking them through how to debate, how to communicate, a great percentage of my students actually improved learning-wise, and their spoken English improved also. So with that one example, I've been able to take them through the situation, the task, the action, and the result of everything that I did.
Okay, that's very interesting. So I'm curious, how did you transition from that example to the second example you gave in your essay?
Okay, transitioning from one example, first off, when you're using different examples, one thing you should notice, don't jump from one example to the other without completing the first example. So it's like, okay, one paragraph, I explained one point, then the second paragraph, I explained another point. So I dedicated one paragraph, I dedicated each paragraph to a particular point. I didn't mix 2 points up in a paragraph.
So if you're applying for something like creative arts,
Okay.
must your example be something around creative art, something that must portrays the skills that you have that are related on creative art, or just any random leadership experience is going to suffice?
I applied for creative writing. So what I did was I made sure the examples I gave in all of my essays, in the leadership essay, teaching English and literary studies is in the field of creative arts. It's not like I didn't have other examples, but I needed to find something related to the space I'm into. So what I did was I picked up examples from different areas and looked for the ones that were closely related to the course I was applying for so as to be able to prove myself in that particular field.
When you were doing your NYC,
Okay.
you did some teachings. When you just want to have an idea of what you wrote.
Yeah, okay. For my networking essay, for instance, I made mention of winning Omvida in 2017. After being shortlisted for Omvida, I was able to take a course in script writing from the Pan Atlantic University. So I made use of that because it's closely related to the course I'm applying for, which is creative writing. Okay.
What other example?
Okay, another example I used for my leadership essay was in 2000 and I can't really remember when, but I made use of an example where I was shortlisted for a boot camp where we had to figure out the issues facing a particular community in Ikorodu, Ijede local government. So my responsibility on that particular project was to collate documentary results as a scriptwriter. So I made use of that as an example that while at the boot camp, I was able to use my skills as a scriptwriter to collate the documentary results. And at the end of the day, when we were done doing that, we were able to create a documentary that we presented to some funding organizations to generate funding for that particular local government area. But I made mention of the fact that I was there as a scriptwriter and documentary director, which is in line with the creative space I'm applying to.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
at each of those stories, you were mentioning your role.
Yes.
What you did exactly, and what the results were.
Yes, I mentioned my role. Even in cases where I had to work with a group of people, I was very specific as to what my responsibility was in that particular group. So I mentioned my role. I mentioned what my role was able to help the group achieve in that space.
As more impact. How were you thinking around it in your head?
Okay, before I started writing my essays, one thing I did was for each of the essays, I had a pen and a notepad. In fact, I got higher education for this particular purpose. So for my leadership essay, I wrote out every single area I've proven myself to be a leader. I listed everything before writing the essay at all. So I did the same thing for networking, I did the same thing for studying in the UK, I did the same thing for career. So after listing everything, I had to collate everything, and then I had to place them in order of priority, this would stand a better chance against this one. So after doing that, then I was able to read some examples of essays online. So I already saw what people had written in the past. So I was able to use that as a guide to write my own essay. Yeah.
I was curious, where did you find them, and who were the people that
Well, basically, I read from the Chevening's website, their leadership essays, examples, networking, all the essays. I read everything on Chevening website. Then I saw a couple of others on some other website, but majorly on Chevening's website.
were interesting. So I want us to backtrack a little bit. So when you were putting these three stories together, what kind of introduction did you make before you dive into your first example?
For my leadership essay, first of all, I introduced who a leader is. I talked about who a leader is, and then I talked about how over the years I've proven myself to be a leader in different occasions, rather. And then after making that little introduction, I was able to go into the essay proper and start stating the examples of how I showed my leadership skills.
Interesting. So how did you conclude the essay?
For my leadership essay, I concluded with, not word for word though, I summarized it that, okay, I'm aware Chevening is looking for leaders, and over the years, gathering all of these experiences, putting all of my past experiences together, and the platform Chevening is going to give to me, meeting other leaders, I would be able to do even more with the opportunity I'll be given. That's not exactly what I wrote, but I think, yeah, just a summary. That's basically it.
Or how they can better think about stuff to put out there, or how they can even check for grammars,
Okay.
and all those other correctness you ensure when you're writing an essay.
I would say first off, that's why you need to start applying early enough, because okay, I didn't study creative writing in school, but I'm good when it comes to writing. But even when it comes to scholarships, being a good writer at times, I've seen people that are great writers not getting the scholarship. So first things first, start writing your essays as early as possible. And after writing them, get people you trust, whose judgment you trust, to help you proofread, to help you ensure that, okay, you have everything in place. Then edit your essay, read it over and over and over again. There are different editing softwares, proofreading softwares online you can use to edit your essays. There's Grammarly. I made use of Grammarly, so you can use that to check for grammatical errors in your essays. Grammarly has both the paid and the free. I use the free. With the free, you can still do quite a lot. I use the free plan.
This was how I started my introduction.
Okay.
So these are the examples I gave. This was how I included it, so that to come out concrete.
Okay. For my leadership essay, I started with an introduction, a brief introduction, and then in my second paragraph, I started talking about instances where I displayed my leadership skills. I gave one example in the first paragraph, I gave another example in the second paragraph. I made use of 2 examples, so by the time I got to my last paragraph, I just brought everything I'd written from start to that particular point and summarized it and made mention of the fact that, okay, putting all of this together, I'm actually convinced that with these experiences I've gathered over the years, I'm very, very suitable for the Chevening scholarship, and then getting to meet people would also help my leadership skills and help me achieve my future career plans too.
Okay, so for the leadership essay, I think the prompt goes something like Chevening seeks to award young leaders who have shown leadership potential in the past. Can you tell us how you have exhibited leadership attributes in the past and give examples or something? So I started with, I had 3 examples. I know when I was preparing, we had a lot of sessions from current scholars at the time who used to advise that we should try to have at least 3 examples. And so I had 3 examples. Before then, I had already, like when I wrote my first draft, I actually had about 5 or 6 examples. Started with my introduction, where in the introduction I talked about, I think I did not define leadership, but I talked about what leadership means to me, and how I talked about how I felt that leadership means taking initiative and being willing to actually get into the depths. That's the sure way to actually lead is to lead by example. So that was my introduction. So after the introduction, I then went into my examples. In the final draft, I'll talk about the final draft primarily. I had 3 examples. The first example, I talked about my experience working with ISEC, which is an international. Actually, I started from my oldest leadership experience. I talked about how my leadership journey started in I think that was 2016 when I did something regarding debating in my faculty, because I used to be a member of the University of Lagos Debate Society. So I talked about how I started, myself and my partner at the time started a debating and a book club in the Faculty of Engineering to encourage engineering students to debate. Then I went to the second paragraph using the STAR approach, of course, where I highlighted the situation, the task, action, and results. And for the second example, I talked about my experience with ISEC, being a leader with ISEC, which is an international youth-led leadership organization. And what we do at ISEC is really providing spaces for young people to develop their leadership skills by contributing to sustainable development goal projects. So I talked about how while I was the vice president of one of the arms of ISEC Lagos at the time, I was able to secure a lot of partnerships with organizations that helped us to further our goals of contributing to various sustainable development goals in Lagos. I mentioned specifically the goals that we focused on at that point in time. And then I think my third example revolved around one of the slum education projects I managed for a 1-year period. I think that was in 2019. And I talked about the situation. The situation was that we got to that community and realized that a lot of the children in that community is the Shogunrago community in the Waya area in Yaba. Realized that a lot of the children in that community were out of school. That was the situation. So the task was to come up with an initiative or an idea to provide the children with free basic education so that they can at least become literate. And then the action I took was to work with my team at ISEC at that point in time to draft a plan for the project, and then went ahead to recruit volunteers from the University of Lagos. And then I talked about how I went on to manage the project for a 1-year period. And then the result was that at the end of that 1 year, we were able to see considerable improvement in the literacy levels of these children. And at the same time, I also stressed how I was able to secure a partnership with another organization that helped us to secure sending 20 of the about 50 children we worked with in that 1-year period to proper government schools to actually further their education. And then I also concluded with how through the Chevening program, I look forward to further developing my leadership skills so that I can come back to Nigeria to contribute to further contribute to sustainable development in the energy sector.
How were you able to cram all of these things into
okay, so like I said, my first essay draft was over 1,000 words. At that point in time, I had over 5 examples. When I brought it down to the 3 examples I was interested in, I still had over 800 words, I think. So it now came down to writing skills, right? Learning how to eliminate unnecessary words, like sometimes write the way we talk. So on the other hand, like, okay, on the other hand can easily be shortened to likewise or something like that, or similarly, something like that. So learning, it came down to writing skills really. So I took time to paraphrase all my paragraphs without eliminating the overall thought I was trying to pass across. And I also had people who are better than me in writing to also help me review my essay. I think I was able to successfully bring it down to about 600 words, but ultimately bringing it out to 500 words, I had the help of someone else who was a better writer than me, and who even helped me because I tried my best to, I can't remove anything else. From these things, but my friend was eventually able to help me bring it down to the required number of words and without eliminating the message I was trying to pass across.
Are there any apps that help you?
I think I used Grammarly, and at that point in time I have a Grammarly premium subscription. So after my first drafts, I think I used Grammarly a lot when I was trying to bring it down to my second and third drafts eventually.
So do you think another approach, or maybe don't use the star approach, do you think someone can get to leadership?
Okay, so I think I cannot say for sure because I feel like the first time I applied, I didn't really use the STAR approach. But what the STAR approach does for you, it helps you simplify the process of actually passing your message across, or it makes the STAR approach actually helps to make your impact clearer, because like STAR means, like I said, situation, task, action, and most importantly, result. It's possible for you to write your story or to cite an example in the first place and not be very clear on the result or not be very clear on the impact you've made. But the STAR approach helps you to actually, before you write the essay, you've already written it down. What was the situation? What was the task? What was the action? What was the result? So you have to be very clear about those 4 things. And it's not just something that somebody just came up with. Using the STAR approach is actually an advice from the Chevening Reading Committee. So every year they release I think I can't remember how they term it now, but it's basically what they feel like people who were shortlisted for the interviews did right and what the ones that were not shortlisted did wrong. So they just give us a summary of that, and they always encourage scholars or applicants to use the STAR approach, especially in their leadership and networking essays.
Final advice for anyone that is having struggles with leadership essay?
Okay, so I feel like before you write your leadership essay, you actually need to outline everything you believe you have done as regards leadership. So sit down before you start writing the essays at all. Sit down and say, okay, at what point in time do I think I was able to take initiative to solve a problem? At what point in time did I lead a group of people to address a challenge in my community, in my society, in my school? So you do not have to be the president. You do not have to be the leader of something for you to have taken a leadership initiative. Even in my leadership essays, out of the 3 examples, that I used eventually. It was only one that I talked about when I was the vice president of an organization. So for the others, I just the other one also, I was the project manager for a project. But I think the most important thing is you need to show you need to show what you did in particular, not just what you did as a team. You need to show what you did in particular. You need to show how you were able to lead other people to contribute to sustainable development, or to contribute to effective positive change in the community. That's it really. So if you are able to list out all the leadership examples you feel you have in your head, then you can then proceed to write the leadership essay while buttressing each of the points.
For the leadership essay, you know the question is shown on the screen already. Chevening is looking for leaders or influencers that have shown that have displayed leadership skills and something like that nature. That's the way the question is. So in my own case, I gave examples of an experience I had. So first of all, I know most people would want to define leadership in their essays. I won't advise you to do that because I think the panel already knows what leadership is. So you don't need to start defining leadership by Google or by this dictionary or according to William Millian, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to tell them that. They want to know how you as a person sees leadership. So the best way is not to tell them, is to show them. You should show them how, if you believe a leader is someone that is selfless, you should show that. You don't need to say it. You should show that. I mean, it could be like by being selfless or by carrying out these tasks, which is a trait which is a leadership trait. That's how I've shown it. So just show it. Like in my own example, I would like to say I went out of the normal writing rule. I know most times we want to define leadership and the rest or talk about leadership. I started my essay with a statement. Like mine was a statement. I still remember how it was. I was like, in quotation, JNet, women cannot practice engineering. So that was just my own way of trying to catch the audience of to catch the attention of my reader. I was trying to tell a story about an encounter I had when I decided to study engineering, and I told the teacher in school, then secondary school, and he said engineering is a very good course, but in his own opinion then, he said women cannot practice engineering. That was what he thought, and somehow that thing really affected me. I was thinking about it. Even when I told my friends in school then, they would be like, how are you studying engineering? People would be like, can you climb poles? Or can you know this wrong conversation we used to have then about engineering? But because that's really what I wanted to do, because I had this passion to solve problems and I felt engineering would be like the right path for me. I still picked my JAM form and everything. I filled in chemical engineering and I was ready to face that thing. So this story I'm explaining to you now, I somehow narrated this story in my essay as my first example. So I talked about the fact that I got to my faculty and it was like this stereotype was actually a reality. It felt like this stereotype was real because I got to school and the gender ratio in my faculty was so large. We had more guys than girls. We didn't have any female lecturers at my first year in school. We were all male lecturers in the faculty and stuff like that. So I was discouraged. And somehow I noticed that I didn't only face that discouragement. I noticed that some of my friends too had that. Yes. Do you know, in my first year in school, I think in the first 1 week I did not learn. Because when I was very young, I had just finished secondary school. So I'll go to the class like this and the whole class, you know how Nigerian universities are, everywhere, just the whole class was just full, and I'll walk into the class and I see everyone sitting down and I was like, how will I cope with this kind of thing? And I'll go and stay in one other quiet class until I got the courage to start my classes. So somehow, I was able to attend one conference that was organized by the Nigerian Society of Engineers in Port Harcourt. And then they got to the time for them to introduce the keynote speaker for that event. They talked about the person's honors, what the person had done, different groundbreaking things this person had done. Funny enough, it was a lady. I was amazed. So I was listening to the lady. She talked about how she had done things. She shared her experiences, and I was motivated. This thing just, let me use the word ginger. I was ginger. So I met this lady after her presentation. I told her I would love her to come back to talk to students, because I knew that I had friends and I had colleagues that also had this belief that they cannot practice engineering, but actually there are female engineers out there practicing engineering. So I was looking for a way to break that stereotype in my school, because somehow it wouldn't affect the academic performance of some female students. Because most people felt that degree would be a waste. So what's the need? Since I won't practice, let me just get any grade and go out of school and start a business or something. So then I started, after that I got to know about this association they called APWEN. is Association of Professional Women Engineers of Nigeria. So I started attending events and I networked. I used networking skills and I got to meet people. So I was able to meet with the president for Nigeria, engineer Maya Etuba. I met with her at one of the conferences, and somehow I told her I told her I wanted to start a chapter in my school, and she said that was a very good thing to do. And then I formed an executive council and we started. So the goal of this, normally the goal of APWEN in general is a body that is in Nigeria, is to act as the catalyst for the advancement of women engineers. So in my own case, I was looking for a way to improve the participation of female engineering students in engineering. So then I came up with my executive council, and then we organized this conference. The theme of the conference then was Girl Child Participation in National Development, the Engineering Perspective. So I invited female engineers that came to the school to introduce us to engineering and just talk about our role as female engineers in the Nigerian economy and how we need to break the stereotype and do great things. So after that, I organized other events. I organized excursions, field trips, workshops, just to help to increase the passion of female engineers. So now this is the thing, and let me come back to this. So using the STAR approach, you have to use the STAR approach in your examples. It should be a situation, a task, action, and result. So the situation here was that I was faced with this stereotype that it was like a setback somehow. Not just me, we had other female students that had that stereotype. So what was the task? I needed to break that stereotype. What was the action? I had to go out of my way to meet these female engineers, form this association, and then bring them to school to help motivate female engineering students to increase their participation. And what was the result? Female engineering students were able to see that they can actually practice engineering because they're seeing other female engineers that are practicing, and get a way to network with them and just in general to improve their passion. So when doing your leadership experience, you don't need to talk about you holding a position or you are the president of your this or that, or that's not what Chevening wants. I think it's about what you did with that that position. In my own case, I wasn't holding any position then when I did all these things. It was just an initiative I started. So you need to be able to talk about the problem you solved or the impact you've made, or just somehow share the impact you made with that position, not just about the position. So what do you think?
Imagine you're in an interview panel and then you hear a story like this. You already carried away, like you're already lost. It was so interesting, like having to listen to a conversation. And then it's kind of similar to my own perspective. Okay. And you know, when you're talking about your leadership essay, you know, you have to be able to create this. So you have to be able to create this connection from the start of your leadership experience towards that particular stage that you're in now. Because some people will just, I was leader in one primary school and the next now I was leader in one university or secondary school. There's no connection between that your leadership in primary school and your leadership at this particular level that you're in. So for me, I try to create this connection because I have a very unique story. I grew up like in the slums of Lagos, machine, street boy. Wow. And then, you know, the secondary school issue, then, you know, where people are always wanting to be, they want to hoard their textbook or their notebook or information. They don't want it to do it. They don't want it to see it. So because they feel like, you know, it's competition, first, second, third, all of those things. They want to be far better than you. So I didn't have a computer at home. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have anything. My sister didn't have. So I was always, the way I get information was to go tell my friend and say, if WAEC is about to be out, well then the school then Lagos is free senior secondary school examination, so I didn't have to pay. But then for JAM, the school would do all of those enrollment for you. But for JAM, I was like, I told my friend and said, you know, when it's time for JAM, you know, please let me know so that as I'm going to buy your form and apply, and I'll join you and I'll buy the form and apply. But guess what? They told me that JAM is ready. But guess when they told me? A date to when they want to go write JAM.
Wow, that was serious.
So it was crazy. It was painful because that meant my sister and I had to spend one extra year at home. Because my sister and I, we met when we were in primary 5, so we started growing together like that. So what that meant was that my sister and I had to stay one extra year at home. And this was very painful to me because also back at home, I was always like, I have this very low voice and I talk very slow. So people always see me as, in even anything, you know, I'm always like you know, when people want to bully you, I'm like the easy target to bully. You can easily bully me. I cannot fight, so I don't have strength. So I felt, and I said, even if I don't have the strength to fight, I should be able to show another way of how I can do stuff. And also, I was like, that I had to stay one extra year for JAM doesn't mean that another person has to stay another extra year for JAM. So I was like, no matter what, I would always find a way to make information available for everyone and share information as possible as I can. So from that day onward, every morning, like 7 a.m., I will leave my house and I'll run down to the bus stop. It's a very far distance to go and read newspaper headlines. And I'll be stretching my head and I'll be reading, and the people that will buy or people that will rent, I'll not be stretching and just be reading like headlines. I'll be looking at all of. So every morning I was doing that, and I'll come back to the house and tell people what's happening. And then I just earned the nickname Information Minister, because any information you need, I was always ready to give it to you. Then as a small kid, I was like, I got into university at about 17. So I was like very, very small. Then I was always doing that every day. So the day JAM form came out, I knew, and as many people that wanted to write JAM, I made them like, okay, JAM form is that. In fact, I was even, then I started learning how to use computers gradually at cyber cafe. So I registered for my sister and registered for free for as many people that wanted to register. So that was how I said, and I was like, there's no way every information I have access to, I always make it as democratic and open and available as possible. So that's how I kind of ventured into the information space. So when I got to school at the University of Nigeria, so I started this very blog that it was not so successful, whereby I told my friend, I said, after school, many of the times your projects, your project is just dumped
in the dustbin.
Just dumped somewhere. So I was like, there's a way we should be able to make this thing, available. So I created a blog whereby I was asking everybody to send me their projects. I was putting on the blog for posterity's sake, so that you can always have access to it even after all of those things, and whenever you want to do that and stuff. So, a lot of people fought me like, oh, that's nonsense, this one, that one. They didn't believe in it, but some few people sent me their projects and all. So while I was also in school, I decided to join ISEC, and from there, ISEC is a student, but the Association for Students, I can't even remember, it's French, but just shortened for ISEC. So whereby they mostly promote exchanges between students in as many countries as possible. And so I joined ISEC and I was project coordinator, and then I also joined the media team where we were writing blogs and all, because my own was just to make information as accessible to as many people as possible. So that was how I ventured into it. But when I left school, I did political science in school. When I left school, I started asking myself, so I have this love for communications, and then there's political science. Where is the synergy between political science and communications and information? So in my research, that's so after I went for my NYC, all of the money I saved from my NYC, I used it to save up, and then I bought a laptop. I bought a mobile phone. I bought a modem. I don't want to call any brand names, so I won't do free ads for them. So I bought a modem, and then I started researching. For 1 month, I was indoors. Like, if you see me, you think I'm crazy, because I was hardly having my baths. I was hardly sleeping. And then there was this very massive bonus on the internet and free nights browsing. So I was just doing all of this thing. So after about a month, I figured out about media and information literacy and how it relates to politics and how it relates to democratizing information and making information available and accessible to all. And that was just like the eureka moment for me. And I was like, so this is it. So I began to research and reach out to people and leaders in different. And I said, at least, at all, within the next 5 years, if we are going to look out for who are like the leading young people in Africa, I want to be among the top 10, and then among the top 5 eventually. And so that's what I started pushing. And then I found that actually, in media and information literacy, they're being pioneered by very advanced people like professors, doctors, and I was like, there's no plan for young people. So I reached out and I said, what if we start engaging young people in media and information literacy? Having to make young people the focal points, having to make young people be the ones that are pushing this. Like, you guys are professors and doctors and academics, you have the experience. Young people have the passion and the drive. So why don't we have this intergenerational synergy and dialogue? So they're like, oh no, it cannot work. You know a lot of this whole repression and not repression, but they were skeptical about trying something new. And after
scared of change most times.
After a lot of lobbying and pressure to UNESCO and to the Global MIL Alliance, they're like, okay, if you think it can work, go and try it and see. So I went and I set up a team, and it was crazy because you have to convince people that there's no money, and you just want to test this thing and see if it will work, so that you can prove that young people can actually do this thing. And they're like, go and let's see what you'll come up with. And to cut the long story short, I was able to build a very effective team, and today it's more like it is young people that are now like the focal point for media and information literacy around the world. And then I now happen to be the global coordinator for the UNESCO-led Media and Information Literacy Alliance, because I took that bold step to want to make information very accessible to all. And ironically and jokingly, I used to think I'd been able to raise about 130,000 USD to promote media and information literacy for young people around the world, and then maybe about 7 million naira in Nigeria. Wow. And then yesterday, my partner and I were just joking about impacts that we've done, and she started counting out to me a lot of funds I've been able to raise for organizations and for young people that are working around media and information literacy in Europe, in Africa, and around the world. And it was going to, between the space of like 3 years or 2 years plus, it was going to about over 300K. And I sat down and I was like, have I been able to really do this? And it was very, very shocking to me. And at that point, I realized that, many times leadership is also about, trying to ensure that a lot of people get access to as many things as possible. And then a lot of people can actually say, because of you, they're able to become who it is that they are. And then a lot of people can say that about me when it comes to media and information literacy space. And when you bring that to your own scenario too, there's this very common thing that people will tell you that you cannot do it, or people will tell you that it's almost impossible. But you're not looking at the now, you're looking at 5 years from now, 10 years from now, will that thing still be possible? And then can you prove it? And then you also have to be ready to go alone and prove it. And then trust me, when you're not able to now prove it, people will now start
buying the idea
and then buying the idea. So for me, when you're writing your leadership essay, be able to link your personal stories to what pushed you to want to go into a particular leadership role. It can even be as small as being the class captain of your school.
It mustn't be very big.
It can be as small as being the
course rep,
team captain or course rep, or maybe you guys had one very small summer camp and then how you rose up to take charge of those things. But so long as you're able to convince that with this A that I've done, I have the potential to do B and C, then trust me, you're good to go. Because looking at her story, looking at my story, we just have to show that, we've done this, we've been able to take up leadership roles when people actually think that it was not possible. And then with that, everyone will say, if you're able to do this particular thing in this very difficult scenario, they were very confident and comfortable that when you're placed in a much more difficult situation, or even in a much more accommodating situation, you'll be able to actually excel more in that. So for me, that's
okay. So far, we're getting people asking me questions like, what if I don't have any leadership skills, or what if I've not done I've not done big things that Chevening would want to take? So I think what I did in my own time is, whatever you've done, no matter how little you think it is or how big it might seem, just get a book and write down everything you've done. If, for instance, like I always say, you helped an old woman to cross the road, I noticed that old woman crosses the road every Sunday morning, and then the next day you came, you noticed that there are 7 old women on that road, and they always struggle to cross the road, and you decided that out of your will, you go out there to help those old women cross the road. It might look very simple, right? But just put it down there. No matter how little it is, as long as you've made an impact in a particular space, just put it down. Then by the time you are written down, you see that you have lots of examples. Then you now streamline your examples and have it to be like a hierarchy, where you have the one you think has the most impact, and then the next one, and then the next one. So don't just go and give one example. this example I gave was just one leadership example that I gave in my own essays. Don't just give one example and just leave it. You should have multiple examples. Like I will recommend 3 examples, for instance, 3 leadership examples, and your networking essays give like 3 networking examples. That way you're able to convince the panel that it's not just a one-off thing. You actually have it in you. So you give multiple examples in your leadership and your networking essays. So that's for that.
So I think we're good.
Alright, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Subscribe to the AFM series YouTube channel for more and more great videos like this on winning, chevening, and other amazing